a Lord and Savior, Chris Lake. Hello. So Chris Lake released a new banger and I've been getting questions asked about it. So I thought, you know what? Let's unravel this mysteries of the lake, of the pond. So in today's video, guys, I'm going to talk a little bit about the track. I'm going to listen to it, first reactions, and I'll shine some light on some of the production techniques that he is using to get his track to sound the way it does. Now, I'm no Chris Lake, but I got a new track coming out this Friday. So if you guys want to support it, there's a link in the description. The first tab, just double tap, if you like it, pre-save it. So the first production technique that Chris Lake does, again, and this is something that I think most of us know, but if you don't know, that is the way that you introduce the bass. Now, this is the radio edit, but what I always tell my students is that if you're going to bring the bass in, you have to bring it in like it's bigger than Prince. Green Velvet didn't make that track for no effing reason. The problem is people bring in the bass like it's a bass. They don't value it, they're not living in the present. So then it becomes boring, but when you see Chris Lake introduces the bass, there's a lot of elements that go away, so it gets your brain going, huh? Would it go? Beggin. So it's just chords, bass, and vocal. This is something that's called creating contrast. You don't want the break sounding similar to the drop. And again, it's something that you want to practice in your music. From there, I've been getting a lot of questions on the bass. However, making that kind of bass, I have some ideas on what we can do, and I can show you guys how you can do it. There is a key thing to it, and there's a lot of dope stuff. And I think the track, the majority of it, the bass is amazing. Okay, now there's two options that we have. Number one is that we can start with a virgin waveform, with the basic waveform. And from there, we can add an envelope to it here to our coarse pitch. The idea is that we're going to create a pitch envelope, Alt-Shift-Click, make it unipolar. It's going in one direction. From there, we're going to get this knock. Okay, now we're going to put this down 3 octaves. That means if we're in A3, we're going to be playing at A0. So we have a donk bass. Now, if you distort, if you give this sine wave enough, ecstasy, Adderall, meth, it will turn into a square. It will become strong. Okay, so you can do it this way where you have this kind of bass. Now, the other thing that's missing with this bass is just dynamics. So we can lower the sustain volume, play around with the decay and the release. The other way that we can make this is just utilize a very basic square wave. Okay, this will give us another very similar sound to what we are listening to, or basic shapes, and hit it with a square. Now we need to utilize subtractive synthesis. This just means that we're using a filter in order to, get this sort of bass. Now from there, we can use an envelope to control this guy here. Envelopes and LFOs are your slaves, your little minions. Have them do stuff for free. You paid $200 for Serum, so you might as well. And we're gonna get that. And now let's add some release. Okay, let's get rid of the, oh man, there's no distortion, so I'm messing up already. Okay, let's get rid of this chorus because we're not going to need it with the square too much. What key is this song in though? Because we want to hit the notes he is hitting. Okay, I'm sure it's in the top 10. It's a great song. Oh, here it is. Okay. I like how Aluna's name is first. Finally, the vocalist gets some attention. And maybe she produced part of it too. So it's an E flat major, D sharp, which is one of my favorite scales actually. And I think we go down to a major here. So we hit the G3. And we'll talk a little bit about the theory after we figure out the sound. That took long, didn't it? Shut up, but this is what's going to mainly look like. And at the end is where you get the major chord in there, turning this into a major. There we can try and nail it a little better. Maybe the cutoff should be a lot more higher up so the square is more audible. Let's put mono legato on, as with release you want to have that. It's a very nice square bass sound. So the bass is going to be a square. Now, again, there's always variations, and Chris Lake has been known to use presets. I'm not saying that in any way to make him less or any sorts, but what I mean by this is that, you know, in certain presets, they might do crazy stuff, but at the end of the day, the basis of the bass sound is a square wave, and you can get to that in multiple ways through FM, through a square. Now, Chris Lake is utilizing an ARP style of bass, which is pretty unique because I haven't really seen it a lot in the tech house world. Now, what makes it an ARP bass is the fact that it's a sequence that keeps repeating. Okay, make it fast. It's gonna have its own little thing, but at the same time too, it has a bit of a swing to it. It's not like a very traditional robotic. It has a lot of swing. So I'm pretty sure he utilized the swing groove that you can find in Ableton here in the groove pool if you wanted to, like a swing 61 for say, which is gonna add the swing to this. You can also manually insert it. Okay, but what makes this an ARP bass is if we are in D sharp major like Beatport says, the first chord is going to be D sharp F, and then from there we're going to have the A sharp, and then we can go back and repeat. Okay, so obviously here we are hitting that A sharp. We're hitting the 7th, so we have D sharp to D sharp to A sharp. So we're going, again, a chord based ARP, but now utilizing the full triads. Now from here, this is where the scale starts getting a bit weird because as you can see, it's like we're going from major to minor. In the major scale here that we're shown, you know, B is not allowed. It's actually going to be the B sharp. However, if we switch to a minor, you can see now that B is allowed. Now, doing pitch modulations or chord modulations like this, there's the right term for it, I just forget, creates spacey melodies, but also gypsy and very Romanian-ish vibes. There's a scale called the Romanian minor. So this could be one of those scales, but he is going to be doing some form of modulation to this to go from major to minor, which gives the song that very eerie vibe. From there, the bass keeps going up, and again, it's doing the same thing. Then we hit here, and again, we have another chord being played, which is this, and again, just repeats. So again, this might have been made where Chris Lake made a chord progression, and then he utilized an ARP bass. Now, does he know he did the ARP bass? Probably not, maybe yes. That's the cool thing about production. You don't need to know what you are doing. As long as it sounds good and you're trying stuff out and you just have a good ear for it, you can find out later what it is from the smartasses in the comments. We have this change that occurs, D sharp here. Instead of hitting an A sharp, we're going with the G. Now with the G here, we are hitting a D sharp major chord now, which again makes it sound very eerie. We're doing modulations as they happen. The call and responses are sick in this, and the sounds, I'm not gonna lie, these sounds he has are definitely the kind where you either find it in a preset or you experiment to get them. However, a while back I released the Seaver Diva Edition Volume 2 where I spent a good amount of time trying to remake the Yuma lead, which is very similar to this one. Okay, it's not the same vibe, but it's around the same, you know, somewhat vibe. The thing with these kind of sounds is that there's a lot of shaping that occurs in the sound. And what I mean by that is you start with like a sound, and then you experiment, and then you shape it with the filters, and that creates the kind of sound. The other thing too is, if you notice, there's this sort of like vibe to the lead where it kind of feels like it's kind of lazy. It's taking its time going from pitch to pitch, and that is what we call I guess you could say legato. And I'm being careful with this because I call it mono legato, but there might be another term, a glide. And in Diva, you can program this here. In the higher it goes up, it takes its time to get up there. Okay, as you can see, but if I lower the glide, it goes straight to it. So if you're trying to make sounds like this, or you're trying to use sounds like this, you can get the Seaver Diva Edition Volume 2 over at evilsounds.com. The other cool thing he does is with the synth. So a lot of you guys like to use Super Sauce, but he does this insane vibrato. And these are the things that professional producers do that you guys, us, I'll say us because I'm not professional, even though I do make money, but is the stuff that brings these tracks to life, because Chris Lake could have just done this and that's it, right? But no, there's a lot of shaping that goes on with the sound. Again, utilizing filters, you can shape this like, so now we have that. But from there, there's even more. There's a vibrato effect, which you can create by putting an LFO here. And then there's a shift that occurs as well, where like the saw is moving. And then on top of that, there is a reverb with a pre-delay on it, which allows, pretty much it makes the reverb lag. So it plays and then the reverb comes. You can also just automate a reverb to come up, but the idea is something like this. Okay, let's put it high. And then you bring it down. So that would be somewhat of a gate reverb where like you, and then you bring it down. Okay, the other cool thing is we can add a pre-delay here, and that's gonna do it for us. See, I'm gonna play, and the reverb lags. You know, as you can see, I feel like Guetta now. Like, hey, the cool thing about return tracks is they're just not for the retired folks or the old people, guys. Like you guys, you know, you could distort it now without distorting the lead here. You know, there's a lot of things that open up when you do these kind of things.
Free, maybe on my floor, sitting right outside my door.
Also, when we hear the break, it also has that cool pre-delay reverb to it. So again, you can do the same thing. So from here, let's turn this into chords. All we have to do is do this, D sharp. Because I mean, if this is an ARP, then it should work, right? And then we're going to switch here to the G. Okay, but here we can also probably bring this in. Yep, there it is. Just do this, put a filter, envelope it, open it up, a bit of attack, some decay, some, yeah. God, I suck. We could say it's this. I feel like Stanley Kubrick's about to like come out with some milk, bro.
Beggin, I'll get you.
Okay, so for, let's say it's one of the chord sounds, it does this. And we want it faster. But again, when you have this plate, you can add this pre-delay. And then that's the cool thing about it. Let's put more width. And then you get it on the sides. Like that. See that? Now this reverb's not the best, but it allows me to teach you the concept of pre-delay, why you would want to do it. Okay, you can also do something very similar with just normal delay, but again, you want to use reverb, you can use reverb, and then you got all kinds of plugins that you guys can utilize, but again, as long as I cement pre-delay to you, I am happy because you learned something today. Finally, in the last drop that he has, the way that he differentiates that last chorus from all the others is by adding a ride. So this is something that you can do in your own tracks when you hit that last drop, is just add a ride. But the Begging song is just a track that it has some really dope stuff in it, but it's just good fucking songwriting. Like, it's such a great track. I have that on repeat. I think like half of these plays are from me in the Jeep just cruising. The last thing I want to add that I heard in a song, but I didn't really get to touch on as I was recording this is, you know, the modulation of chords. For instance, you have the chord like this. But throughout the song, there's also layers to the chord. And don't be scared of adding layers. Like, one of the things he does is, it sounds like he adds a top layer. And one of the cool things you can do with wavetable synths is utilize FM style wavetables to give this really nice sheen on top to the sound. Check it out. We're going to put it quiet. Okay, there it is. But let's make it like longer. And this is up 2 octaves. When you're layering sounds like he does, it sounds like he has like a basic chord, but then he adds like some stuff on top to help, again, cover more of the frequencies without adding more junk and making it sound cluttered, which I again, you hear these little things, you don't think much of them, but those are the things that lead to these songs sounding the way they do. And finally, just to add, guys, there are different kind of synths you can use to achieve these sounds. I personally use Serum a lot because everyone has it. However, if I was making stuff like this, I would opt to use something like the Tal Uno, Juno-based sound, something that has a Juno sound, Silent, Diva. Use the Diva Juno kit in order to create these sounds because it's a lot easier to achieve the vibe when you're using the same stuff that Chef used. If you use like some other bass or something, it's going to be a pain in the ass to get it. However, it's still possible. And again, it's just about education and enjoying what you guys do, getting into the gear, the history, where these sounds come from, what synths made these kind of sounds, makes your life a lot easier. So those are some of the more common questions I got asked, and hopefully I shine some light on some stuff here for you guys to use in your next track. If you guys want to return the love back, you guys can check out my new track with Matilo called Thinking About You. It's out this Friday, and you guys can pre-save it in the description. I also have a bunch of sound banks used by amazing producers like James Hype, Mal P, Jord, Sid, West End. These are guys moving tech house forward. So if you guys want to utilize sound banks that these guys are using, check out the Deceiver series on evilsounds.com. I put my heart and soul into those packs, and it's so rewarding seeing people use them the way they should instead of me using them to make weird stuff. Nah, I just like more melodic stuff, guys. But if you do too, check out the track. Just saying. Now, if you guys want to further your knowledge, I did make a video about Mal P's music production, and a lot of people keep asking me questions about him, and I always link them to that video. I talk a lot about how he did those cool buildups, the cool sound. So if you're looking to add that to your tool set, then make sure to check that video out. You won't regret it. And again, as always, happy producing.